What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we have a review of Akhenaten and their new album, The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, via Satanath and Dark Temple Records. And hey, if you'd like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Akhenaten is a Colorado blackened death metal duo that is steeped in the mythology, mysticism, and melodies of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Highly recommended for fans of Rotting Christ, Al-Namrood, Melechesh, and maybe even some Behemoth as well. Also responsible for black metal project Helleborus, I have been very impressed with the band's output over the last few years, including 2016's Incantation Through the Gates of Irkalla, and even more so the 9 out of 10 follow-up Golden Serpent God in 2018. And right off the bat, I gotta say, these guys have stepped up their game in every single way across albums, especially on Golden Serpent God, and it's really interesting to see the direction that they've now gone with this album. They have continued their dedication to folky atmospheres that take you to another time and place. Speaking of which, we open up with Neferkaptah's Tomb. This one is just such an amazing way to open up the album and really sets the tone for everything that's to come. It opens with these bells, singing bowls, throat singing, and tribal drums, just really soaking in the atmosphere at this point, and it is absolutely stunning. It's got these captivating, very ancient sounding melodies, and then bam, they hit you with this crunchy distortion. The guitars have this just enormous sound. It just sort of echoes into the recording space, and then this is soon followed by the very imposing death growls. Decent variety with these two. You got some highs, you got some lows, you got some things in the middle. Reminds me a little bit of something like Rotting Christ. I especially like when they're layered together, the higher snarls with the lower snarls. It adds to this more imposing effect. And then a super infectious groove. Like, you cannot listen to this without your head just starting to bob. And that's what happens to me every time. Whether I try to or not, it's one of those, like, try not to bob your head challenges. You will start doing it whether you want to or not. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. Again, great way to start things off. It is massive. It has this sound, too, of just this ancient evil seeping into the world. This is followed by another high point for me, which is Halls of Amenti. This one gets right into it, no fanfare, just jumping straight into kind of the Rotting Christ vibes again, especially on this one, I would say, but then also complemented by some awesome sitar. There are a couple times where the sitar pops up on this album, and it is always just breathtaking. It just adds to the amazing, stunning world that they've created with this music. The vocals also on this one sound more like an invocation than anything else. Like, it sounds like people chanting and summoning something. Around the middle too, we get another really cool tribal drumming break. That these just tight sounding drum heads, and I picture like a whole group of shirtless, sweaty people in the desert just pounding on the drums. I can also picture these very opulent palaces and then slavers cracking the whips as the pyramids are being built. Really just ugly, just transporting us back to another really unfortunate moment in our history, but something that is just so steeped in all this, like, kind of wonder at the same time. It's this weird yin and yang of building these, like, masterful structures that are the wonders of the world, but then thinking about all the pain and torment that went into them. At this point, we get the first of a few instrumentals in of Emerald and Alchemy, and then there's a number of other ones too. We also have Cult of Kukulkan and Tabula Smaragdina. I'm not going to tell you how many takes it took to say those, and I probably still fucked it up. But yeah, these really do further build the atmosphere. It kind of reminds me of like old PC RPG music. And they're not throwaway interludes either. I'm really not a fan of that. Anytime I review an album and they've just got like a little snippet here, a little snippet there, and it feels just like they almost felt like they had to do it and it doesn't serve a purpose, then that annoys me. But not so here. Like, these form a large component of the album. I'd say, honestly, they probably make up 30 to 40% of the album as a whole, and they are not phoned in at all. These are fully formed compositions. They put just as much care into these as the full ones with the vocals on top of them. And that especially goes for the 6-minute closer, Fall of the Living Gods. Again, just full-on instrumental way to close out the album. Super epic, just as strong as any of the other tracks. Again, just filled with sitar, strings, steel drums, blaring horns, synth, you name it, like, they got it. So they do ultimately really add to the album and the ultimate journey it takes you on. I do feel like they could cut down and trim on some areas, like especially A Hybrid of the Gods comes right after this first interlude and then has its own 1 minute plus interlude on top of that. So that felt a little bit in excess, but other than that, really excellent stuff. Meanwhile, the standard tracks at this point only get longer from here. The Atlantean is among my favorites of these at 7.5 minutes long. Another very hypnotic intro on this one more guitar driven. And again, those moments, they're never copy-paste. Like, it would be really easy for a band to just be like, oh yeah, Egyptian, just throw on that Egyptian sound. Like, bands do that. Like, that's a thing that happens. There's such a stereotype sound to this. Here, though, every single piece has some subtle variations. There's a lot of thought going into the little nuances and the instruments that are being played, how they're being played, the mood that's being conjured, kind of the size of how it sounds. And this track ultimately expands into a really cool, fast, exotic sounding picking pattern. It's one of the more kind of straight up, faster guitar driven songs. It actually reminds me, there's a song on Halo 2, and it's only on the original version. It is not on the Master Chief Collection version, because I think they lost the rights to it, but there's a part where you're flying the Banshees, like out in this kind of like sandstorm area between parts of a ship, and it used to be the song that was actually, fun fact, done by Incubus. I talked about this on the Metal Meltdowns live stream when we were replaying it for fun. But yeah, anyways, it kind of reminded me of that, but this is much more mature. The longest track on the album is The Black Land at 8 minutes. Solid track. The thing that stood out to me on this one every time I listened to it is that his vocals, more and more as you get deeper into it, start to sound like Randy Blythe on like early Lamb of God, which is a weird fit for this like blackened death Egyptian kind of motif, but there it is. And yeah, that gives a pretty good idea of the album as a whole. This is actually their longest outing so far, just shy of an hour. Overall, I think I like Golden Serpent God just a smidge better, and just know that it's because I'm biased more towards kind of concise and heavier approaches, which that album definitely has. If you just want like a banger with still the atmosphere, then I would lean more towards that one. It's also just a little bit more single driven. There aren't really a ton of like singles, so to speak, on this album, except maybe the first 2 tracks, but ultimately it's not that kind of album. It's really more meant to be taken in as a whole work. So for an album that's much more focused on atmosphere, it's fantastic. So much so that I think some of my fellow reviewers are going to like this even more than I am. Particularly, I'm thinking of Quest for Metal, maybe Jamie Horsley as well. But yeah, in a word, gorgeous, stunning, it really takes you places. To take a line from my previous review, it's all implemented with obvious respect and admiration. Akhenaten aren't merely co-opting a culture and history, they seem to be living it. This is a celebration, not some shallow cash grab.
That belongs in a museum!
I give the Emerald Tablets of Thoth a 9 for enjoyability. Start to finish, really fantastic. Again, I lean a little bit more towards something a little bit heavier, a little bit faster in terms of like this score in particular, but still, fantastic. I give it a 9 for musicianship. Again, with all of the subtle little instrumentation, all the additional folky and regional instruments, the way they pull it all together is nothing short of just sheer madness. Like, I can't even imagine. And I give it an 8 for innovation. I would say that this is a solid step forwards from the band and something unique that you're probably not going to hear a whole lot else of in the year. So an 8.7 overall and a B+ for Akhenaten and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Get it once more via Satanath and Dark Temple Records. Y'all, thanks as always for watching, and let me know down in the comments, what did you think of this album? What is your favorite record kind of in this style? I'm particularly talking about these sort of Egyptian theme, more atmospheric, kind of folky albums. But yeah, let's have a conversation down there, and stick around because I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. More album reviews, tier lists, interviews with bands on the podcast. You name it, we've got it, so plenty of reasons to subscribe if you have not already. Also, chat with us on the Discord and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.